It's 2011 and Nintendo Wi-Fi connection has been out for 7 years now and has been used in countless Wii and DS games at this point. This service has already created a multitude of amazing memories at this point. However, it's been 7 years and the service was definitely staggering in popularity at this point. I mean, the DS and Wii have been out for 7 and 5 years respectively, and those consoles were actively competing in an online gaming sphere that pushed party calls and competitive team-based games to the forefront. You know what it was like in 2011 on the PS3 and Xbox 360. Meanwhile, Nintendo is always perceived to be a few steps behind when it comes to technology and just how they run their online services as a whole. This would become much more apparent with the release of the Nintendo 3DS in February 2011. A portable console released in an era where smartphones were completely taking over and portable consoles were honestly seen as a waste. With the release of this new console and an entirely new generation of gaming, came an online service to entirely replace Nintendo Wi-Fi connection. I am of course talking about Nintendo Network, a quite peculiar service in all honesty. If you thought Nintendo was experimenting in the Wii and DS era, man, Nintendo was all over the place from 2011 to 2017. They tried so many different things with the 3DS and the later released Wii U, all of which make the story of Nintendo Network's closure much more interesting. Yes, you heard that right, closure. Nintendo Network was around for over a decade before being discontinued on April 9th just last year. But if you thought the story was as simple as Nintendo pulling the plug and having a few dedicated fans online for just a bit after the plug was pulled, you know, similar to Nintendo Wi-Fi connection's closure, you'd be dead wrong, because this story involves players staying online for months after the closure, hackers getting into Nintendo's developer servers just to stay online a little longer, and drama surrounding players lying about their activity post-shutdown. However, I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's rewind a bit and get into what went down in the final 24 hours of Nintendo Network. Nintendo Network was released in 2012, just after the 3DS had released and just before the Wii U was scheduled to come out. Nintendo Network, as you can imagine, provided free online functions for the Wii U and the 3DS. Being the successor to Nintendo Wi-Fi connection, this service came with tons of upgrades like proper gaming profiles through Nintendo Network IDs. Unfortunately, this was exclusive to Wii U's. 3DSs were stuck with a universal friend code system. Nintendo at this point, with Nintendo Network in mind, were absolutely ready to take over the online gaming sphere. They were leaving no stone unturned. As late president of Nintendo, Satoru Iwata, stated, unlike Nintendo Wi-Fi connection, which has been focused upon specific functionalities and concepts, we are aiming to establish a platform where various services are available through the network for our consumers. And Nintendo absolutely achieved this, starting with, I wouldn't be surprised if you've never heard of this thing. I'm literally learning about it for the first time today too, so Nintendo TV was a free TV on demand service for the Wii U. It let you watch Netflix, Hulu, and even cable channels, if you guys even remember what those are. This service let you interact with your Wii U friends and the Miiverse community to share live reactions of whatever you were watching on that service. Yeah, this thing shut down in August 2015, and it was not popular by any means. It kinda didn't stand a chance on the Wii U in the first place. Nintendo couldn't have possibly predicted how much of a failure commercially the Wii U would have been. Regardless, Nintendo was not discouraged, and their efforts to push Nintendo Network as a proper step up from Nintendo Wi-Fi connection did not end. And it couldn't have been more clear with the release of Miiverse. Yeah, you remember Miiverse. Miiverse was Nintendo's own social network available on Wii U and 3DS. Blah blah blah, I really won't get too much into it. All you need to know is that this was part of Nintendo's efforts to really push Nintendo Network as a service. To be fair, Miiverse was a win. It was generally popular and liked by the Wii U and 3DS community, despite all the trolling. However, even with its popularity, Miiverse went on to be shut down on November 8th, 2017. Though these services did not shut down alongside Nintendo Network, with them having varying dates of discontinuation, they were still hosted through Nintendo Network and integral to the lead up of Nintendo Network's final moments. I could get into the services bundled with Nintendo Network or Spot Pass, such as Swap Note, Nintendo Video, or even the many games that use Nintendo Network. The point is, 2017 was a climactic year for Nintendo. January came with a bittersweet statement from Nintendo regarding the discontinuation of the Wii U. Fast forward a few months later to March and the Nintendo Switch released, which not only served as a successor to the Wii U and 3DS, but, you know, also went on to be wildly successful. Even with the Wii U being discontinued and the 3DS being soon to follow suit, Nintendo Network was still alive, right? It was still being used on the Nintendo Switch? Well, no. Nintendo actually abandoned Nintendo Network in favor of Nintendo Switch Online, and at the time free service that now has to be paid for, and so began the decline of Nintendo Network. And no other service foreshadowed the shutdown of Nintendo Network more than the closure of the Nintendo eShop for Wii U and 3DS. Launched alongside the release of each console, the Nintendo eShop was the place to pick up games for your console virtually. Honestly, when I got my 3DS back in 2013, I think, I spent so much time looking through the eShop and just watching game trailers and seeing what was on sale. Regardless, like the Wii Shop channel and how it shut down a couple years after the Wii was discontinued, the same can be said for the Nintendo eShop. Announced on February 15th, 2022, Nintendo stated that as of March 27th, 2023, it would no longer be possible to make purchases in the Nintendo eShop. And from this point onward, the Wii U and 3DS were effectively killed off. We're 5 years into the Nintendo Switch's lifespan at this point, with the console selling tens of millions of units consistently each year. The fans who stuck with the Wii U and 3DS were beginning to suspect that the end of their consoles may be near, and their suspicions were proven right when Nintendo would go on to announce later in the year that by their decision, Nintendo Network was projected to be shut down in early 2024. Nintendo then officially confirmed this date via a tweet on January 23rd, 2024, stating that the servers would officially go under on April 9th, 2024. This served as the final blow to the Wii U and 3DS. This buildup brings us to April 8th, 2024. Thousands of players were online to play their last game before the servers they had spent years playing on would crumble. I say this from personal experience because I did this. I was there playing Mario Kart 7. The way Nintendo handled the shutdown of Nintendo Network was straightforward. They had one specific date and time for everyone, where the gateway for Nintendo Network's public servers would close and no new connections could be made to the servers. And so 11 PM hits. Many rushed to record what they believed would be the last matches to be played on official servers. And as soon as midnight hit, Nintendo Network was dead. No new connections could be made, but those who remained online stayed for as long as possible. Many rushed to Twitter to bid their goodbyes, and that's where it ends, right? Well, many also rushed to Twitter to announce the fact that they've been able to remain online. Ended up playing just a little bit more. Wii U is still online. We'll see if I'm still connected. So I'm still on the servers for some hours after the 3DS shutdown. Good night and goodbye 3DS. I wish I had more time with you. As far as is presently known, these are the final 5 players on the entire Nintendo Network, all together in one Discord server, all connected to Generation 6 Pokemon games. You heard that right, there were 5 known players online at the time. Although now we know better than the tracking that was done at the time, minutes after midnight, it was officially estimated that about 150 players were still online on Nintendo Network on various different games. A pool of 250 players was unheard of considering how little remained online during Nintendo Wi-Fi connection shutdown. Nonetheless, strap in because here's where the timeline gets crazy. One full day after the shutdown, players had been disconnecting left and right. There was an estimated 79 players online at this point. Nothing too interesting had gone down just yet, not until we fast forward to the final 12, which would happen just 2 weeks later. With the popularity of this list that had been floating around compiled by the Nintendo Network After Hours team, people would begin to lie about their connections to the servers. Such is the case with Mr. Mii YT. Believed to be a part of the final 12, it turns out he was just lying and faking his online checks. I mean, no hate to the guy, it's just kinda lame. Turns out he actually disconnected on April 11th, but he liked the attention of being one of the last ones online, so he lied. Regardless, that brought the count down to 11. However, later that same day, it was discovered that Mike, the only player connected to Wii Sports Club, managed to connect himself to Nintendo's own developer servers for Nintendo Network. Turns out Nintendo neglected these dev servers when shutting down the gateway for their public production servers. As a result, players found their way in. How this was pulled off, I have no clue, but considering he could just linger around the dev servers pretty much for as long as he wanted to, the team came to the agreement to remove him from the list, seeing as the rest of the 10 were still actively connected to Nintendo's public servers. A full 6 days after those situations, the next disconnection occurred. Mura no Kuma playing Xenoblade Chronicles X had disconnected. This disconnection started a sort of marathon. On May 2nd, Cyndaquil had disconnected from Mario Kart 8 due to a power outage. May 6th, Gora had disconnected from Xenoblade Chronicles X. May 7th, Amanda disconnects from Pokemon X due to someone else disconnecting the internet in an attempt to fix their AC, I guess. May 10th, Eva Rude disconnects from Xenoblade Chronicles X. This disconnection was pretty monumental. Prior to the shutdown of Nintendo Network at around 10:30 PM, FishGuy6564 and his pal Gearworks had actually launched bots to race each other in a friend room on Mario Kart 7. A month later, in a total of 13,151 races played between the two, Gearworks' 3DS had unfortunately disconnected due to a hardware crash. If you're wondering what the score between the two was, by the way, it was 6,495 wins to 6,656 wins, with Gearworks in the lead. What this meant for FishGuy is just the fact that he'd effectively have to run victory laps by himself from now on. Overworld had disconnected from Xenoblade Chronicles X. Not only did this kill off the game, but if you've been keeping track, it also meant that we're down to the final 3. LCD 101 on Splatoon, Slithery Sheep on Super Mario Maker, and Fish Guy on Mario Kart 7 remained. June brought a few surprises, with LCD 101's disconnection from Splatoon on June 15th due to them having accidentally unplugged their router. A few days later, on June 20th, all IPs to Nintendo Network game servers had been removed. This didn't mean much to the players who had managed to remain online on Nintendo's public servers, but it did spell the end more or less for Nintendo's dev servers. As from this point forward, the server's availability would fluctuate, not like it mattered much in the end because there was only like 1 or 2 players occasionally on the dev servers. Just 2 days before these players would hit the 100-day mark, Slithery Sheep was unfortunately disconnected from Super Mario Maker due to a power outage, putting an end to Nintendo Network on the Wii U. This now no longer became the question of who would stay on the longest, but instead became the question of how long were they willing to go on for. Fish Guy was genuinely committed to staying on for as long as possible, but how much longer could this possibly last, now that Fish Guy is the final player on Nintendo Network? About a week later, the Nintendo ID servers mysteriously went under maintenance for about 4 hours. This had absolutely zero effect on Fish Guy, seeing as he was on the 3DS, and as previously mentioned, the 3DS does not use Nintendo Network IDs. Anyway, months pass at this point, August, September, October, and then we fall on November. Fish Guy, the last known player connected to Nintendo Network on 3DS, had disconnected 209 days after the shutdown, not by choice however. Turns out their new 2DS XL had unfortunately crashed, marking the end of Nintendo Network. Lakitu on DS Luigi's Mansion was the last race Nintendo Network hosted. Many questioned the validity of a one-player online race on Mario Kart 7 counting as a Nintendo Network connection, but as router logs from Gearworks back in August proved, Fish Guy's system was still actively using Nintendo Network to reconnect with Gearworks, even though he had been disconnected for almost 3 months back in August. Regardless, this was the end of Nintendo Network, a 7-month-long journey that brought together a community of passionate fans to witness the fall of the relatively unpopular consoles. Before I close this video, I just want to give a shout out to Pretendo Network, a revival service for Nintendo Network that is actively trying to preserve online capabilities for many Wii U and 3DS games. Huge thanks to the Nintendo Network After Hours team for compiling a comprehensive list of disconnections. Genuinely, this video would have taken ages if I had to piece this info together myself. I finally uploaded it on my second channel, so definitely make sure to check out that video. While you're here, why not binge my other documentary-ish videos on this channel? They're all right here in a playlist. Also subscribe so I can reach 100k before the end of the year. Goodbye.